They had a good story today, which was a bunch of academics have come forward under the cloak of anonymity to tell us what we've kind of already known, which is there's a significant number of people that are getting through the university system whose basic knowledge of English is pretty poor. And I'm not just talking about sort of, kids that don't really know what they're doing that are from here, but the overseas student who doesn't have a grasp of the language. Joe, how do we marry the two? Because I always think sort of, again, I understand the size of the industry, the purpose of the industry, the need for better education, but I think that we've tipped way past this point of no return when the taxpayer will guarantee as many butts as you can get in seats, will pay up front, and anything else you can top up with whoever can pay for it, as opposed to the roller coaster where you must be this smart to ride.
Yeah, it's a really tricky one, and it's one that divides universities as well. So the really kind of elite kind of, bluestone and sandstone universities, the group of 8, they love international students because they've got a great reputation overseas, they've got a huge amount of prestige, and they get a huge amount of their money from international students. And in a sense, this is a really, really good thing because it means they're basically milking that sky whale, which everybody can really understand, and they can then not rely on the taxpayer, and they can also use those funds for research and that sort of stuff. The problem is when you have smaller universities like, say, Western Sydney Uni or Wollongong or whatever, which are great unis, but they cannot attract that kind of investment from overseas. But of course, the other thing that happens is once you have a sort of, pay-as-you-go kind of education system where people from, Asia, for example, are paying huge amounts of money to send their kids to, say, Sydney University. Well, you want bang for your buck, don't you? They have to come back with a degree. And so if they're going to come back with a degree, then you have to make sure that the language component of that degree isn't too onerous, that it's prohibitive for them. And that means that when they're in a classroom environment or a tutor environment with other students, often, and I've heard this anecdotally for, I think, decades now, since almost when I was at uni, that the teaching level of the classroom is, as always, reduced to the person sort of who can understand the least, and that is the problem.
So again, Emily, is that I get all of the business model, but again, doesn't there have to be this trade-off where you have to know that somebody has a certain series of, as they would, not just financial, but intellectual and English competency to be able to do the course rather than just thanks for the cash, all right, fill out the forms, we'll get back to you in 2 years with, something with a little stamp on it.
Yeah. Well, you were saying butts in seats. I don't even know if the butts are in the seats.
Yeah.
A lot of these kids
Fingers on computers.
Yeah, fingers on computers. They're not even going to class.
That's right.
I recently audited
Showing
a
my
course
age.
at USYD, and it was shocking. Like, these students aren't participating. They don't understand the lecture. The lecture was very good. Like, great professor, great content from, and yet these students, they're not participating. They can't really understand. They're just going to go look at the recording later and have it translated for them.
Wow.
And it's really decreasing the value of this education for Australian students, for all the students across the board. Anyone who's going to university to genuinely learn is missing out. So I think the only real solution is to introduce more competition because, like you were saying, with the business case, the incentives are all wrong. It's the 4th largest export in Australia, education, though education is a bit of a loose term.
But then also we sort of, any change to this system, you're trying to stop, poor kids from, no, it's all just about, you can be the poorest kid in the poorest street, in the poorest suburb. If you're smart enough to get into the course, you can do the course, right? But currently it's just, are you willing to turn up after we've offered it to every and anyone else, because the taxpayer will pay up front, and until you earn the best part of $50,000 and a bit, you don't have to pay anything back.